Good morning. Glad to be here with you this morning. And I'm glad to be back in Arkansas. Glad to be home. I enjoyed my trip, got my house sold. Yay. Somebody say, yeah? Oh, absolutely. I feel that way too. Hey, if I could do a handspring, I would have. I was very happy to get that thing sold. Well, I'm very thankful for a lot of things. And you know, it's that time of year where a lot of people are listing out the things they're thankful for. And one of the things I'm thankful for, very thankful for, and have been in the past, are grandparents. I want to talk about grandparents this morning. An 8-year-old wrote this. He said, "A grandmother is a lady who has no children of her own. So she likes other people's boys and girls. Grandmas don't have anything to do except be there. If they take us for walks, they slow down past pretty leaves and caterpillars. They never say, 'Hurry up.' Usually they are fat, but not so fat that they can't tie shoes. They wear glasses, and sometimes they can take their teeth out. They can answer questions like why dogs hate cats and why God isn't married. They don't talk like visitors do, which is hard to understand. When they read to us, they don't skip words or mind if it's the same story all over again. Everybody should try to have a grandma, especially if you don't have television, because grandmas are the only grown-ups who always seem to have time." I thought that was pretty appropriate for grandparents. For 2 solid hours, this lady sat next to this man on a plane, showing him picture after picture of her grandchildren. All 8 grandchildren doing all 8 different activities at all stages of growth in their little short lives. After 2 hours, she apologized and said, "I realize I've just talked and talked and talked. I didn't give you a chance to talk at all. And so what do you like?" And he was an older gentleman as well. And he said, "Well, I like thinking about my grandkids." One satisfied grandmother said, "If I had it to do all over again, I'd just bypass children and go straight to grandchildren." Among many things in life, we ought to find great hope and encouragement. One of those, hopefully for you as for me, is grandparents. And fond memories of them and fond truths, or being fond of the truths that they taught us. But it's very biblical. You think about the way it is in which God has designed us. You know, the animal kingdom doesn't have... Sometimes there's a fondness, sometimes there's a relationship between a mother and almost never a father animal, and then you have that a little bit of a relationship with a child, with the offspring. Very rare, though. I see it a little bit in our cats once in a while. But with humans, it's different, isn't it? With humans, we have a fondness. God has given us something that we have a fondness and can have a relationship and love and caring for our grandparents, our parents' parents. And excuse me. And so this morning, have you given it to me, Roger? I don't know. That suddenly happened, came out of nowhere. But it's different for us, and it's very impactful on our lives if we let it be. If our parent and grandparent relationship can be something that's very impactful upon our lives. You know, on its day of birth, a baby is a child, or is it a grandchild? How often do you find a grandparent that's even prouder and proclaiming the good news about a grandbaby? It's not a baby's born. A lot of times it's, "I've got a grandbaby," or "I've got another grandbaby." We might ask the question, who gets the greater glory? Why is it so exciting when a child is born to a grandmother or grandfather? Who gets the greater glory? Look with me, if you would, to the book of Ruth. And I want to explore the idea of Naomi and her situation. There's romance dominated in this book. You find a love story probably like no other, of how a man and a woman can come together even in difficult situation or in difficult settings and still find love and still find some hope in a tragic situation. So romance dominates the book. But the wedding and 9 months of pregnancy only takes one verse. Look at Ruth chapter 4 with me, beginning in verse 13. It says, "So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son." All in one verse. Right? Pretty good stuff, right? Just right there. There it is. Conclusion. Book's over. There was this trial and difficulty and struggle and famine, and now all of a sudden everything's great. Well, that's not the end of the book. Naomi was a big character in this book, and you find that, and the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, which has not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him." And Naomi took the child, and laid him in her bosom, and became nurse unto him. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, "There is a son born to Naomi." And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse and the father of David. Now, you find a great restorer in this child, Obed, being born. 13, or in a whole wedding, 9 months of pregnancy in one verse. Then Ruth gives birth to this baby boy, and Ruth and Boaz are lost in Naomi's shadow. She has a grandson, and the Bible calls him a son. So great can be the influence of a grandparent upon a child, even when the parents fail at certain things. One writer said, "So great is the influence of even parents who fail their children can become so successful as grandparents that the family tree can be healed." Hezekiah in 2 Kings 18 and verse 5 says, and he was one of the best kings. His father was Ahaz in 2 Chronicles 28, and one of the worst kings. But now watch this. Hezekiah's grandfather was Jotham, 2 Chronicles 27. And he did, the Bible says, that which was right in the eyes of the Lord. Sometimes even our parents can teach us what not to do, and our grandparents can teach us what we ought to do. All right. Grandparents. They need to be the roots of the family. I thought for a long time that as our boys grow up, I desperately pray that the children, the little girls that grow up to be women, that they marry someday, that we all can be a family. I pray for that probably daily, as often as it comes to mind. That I want us to be the type of parents that when our children grow and they have children, we can be grandparents. We can be the grandparents we want to be. We can be that matriarch and patriarch of the family and follow and lead and be that example all the days of our life. That we can show them and give them some roots. The book of Ruth exists to trace the roots of David. Now, that's partly true. One writer said that that's what it was all about. Well, it's not just the roots of David. There was a great romance in there, and there was great knowledge in there, especially about how to be a daughter-in-law and how to be a grandmother. But the book of Ruth is great for grandparents. It's true for all of us. Think about Timothy. You remember Lois in 2 Timothy 1 and verse 5 was a great influence upon him. There are millions of godly grandparents out there who are doing all they can to give their grandchildren roots in the church. I remember looking at the side of the building in Louisville and seeing the date when it was built and thinking about the roots that go into that building. The grandparents, and there were several families there that were generational. They were all the way down, to great grandkids in that congregation, and I'm sure there's several like that here that you see the roots where grandparents have done everything they can from when they weren't grandparents, so that when they are grandparents and great-grandparents, they've built those roots, those foundational things, that they can be such a great influence. Margaret Mead said this, talking about the influence for good that will be given with time spent together. She said, somehow we have to get the older people, grandparents, widows, widowers, spinsters, and bachelors, back close to children if we are to restore a sense of community, a knowledge of the past, and a sense of future for today's children. All too often, children don't understand what it is about roots and what it is about the process of life. So often today, we don't have our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents in the home with us. And we don't see the struggle of age. We don't see the future. We don't see the importance of life and its brevity. Rootless people often are the result of not understanding this. Rootless people, one man said, are ruthless people. Rootless children become ruthless adults. So often we need those roots, the understanding of where we've come from. Dr. Hudson of the American Association for Marriage and Family asked the clients of their biggest influence, or who was their biggest influence growing up. Many said their reply was that grandparents. Clients stated that although they rarely saw them, when they did see their grandparents made them feel as though they were great. One client said, They made me as a child believe in myself. Studies have shown that grandparents are often a key to a child's self-esteem. Isn't that nice? And we've got some friends that are like aunts and uncles, and we just have to look the other way and let them spoil our boys. That's hard to do. But when Grandma takes them, we know they're going to be spoiled. And when we get them back, they feel great. They've been told they're great, they're handsome, and then we have to set them straight. Bring them back to reality, right? Their self-esteem needs to be tarnished just a little bit so we can keep them under control. But you know, my granddaddy Smith, he's going through the stages of Alzheimer's and struggling very much. This last trip to close on the house, we were able to go up and actually close on doing some of his business was done, and Mom and I went up there to visit him. And you know what he told me? And I find it it hurts a little bit, but it's also kind of humorous. He looked at me, he said, and with surprise, he said, you're going to be a big man someday. And I thought, well, I remember when he used to say that when I was growing up. You're going to be a big man someday. Those are the kind of things he always said to me. That's what a grandparent says. A Christian grandparent says, you're going to be a preacher someday. You're going to be a deacon someday. You're going to find a good Christian spouse to marry someday. You're going to be so faithful in the church someday. You're going to do great things for God someday. Grandparents are so important to us, the self-esteem of grandchildren. Don't ever miss out on that. What about remembrance? What about remembrance? Give us roots and give us remembrance. While we can't always, in fact, I skipped one. If you're doing the PowerPoint, go back. I'm sorry. Renewal. Renewal. Not remembrance. Let's go to renewal. See, that PowerPoint locks you down. You can't do anything. Renewal. You think about Naomi in this situation. All the things, and I'll make it short, all the things she'd gone through had been miserable. One writer said Naomi, that this baby Obed was Naomi's Geritol, because she'd been through all these things. The scene is set that Naomi, this grandparent-to-be, she'd been through trial after trial. Famine sent her into the land, and then famine had brought her back. The death of her husband, her 2 sons, she had been through it. She comes back, and Ruth comes with her. And here she is with this opportunity to have something to remember, something to renew her, something to give her renewed strength, something to bring her back from what she'd been through. And you find in this text that she says, He is a restorer of my soul. You find a restorer of her soul, her strength. Restorer of thy life, verse 15. That's what kids do, don't they? Proverbs 17 and verse 6 says, Children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. You know, I remember my parents going through and working all their life and working as I was growing up. My mother ended up being able to come home at one point. But I still remember life as being busy. Dad would travel a lot, not always having time to throw the football or whatever. We did things. We played golf on the weekends, and I washed the cars, and I liked working on vehicles with him. That was part of my time with him. Mowing the yard, whatever. I enjoyed that time with him. It was precious. Enjoyed being able to do those things as I was growing up. But I remember as I got older, I guess they started sleeping a little longer or sleeping harder, and I was busy with my own things, and it seems like they were kind of tuckered out with being parents sometimes, probably because of my own fault, but they were always good parents. But I thought to myself, when we had Dale and David and then Asa, I didn't even recognize my parents. They woke up and recognized how precious life is. And I don't know if my dad will watch this, but he is a changed man. He was a booger bear, hard to be around sometimes, sharp, divisive, just difficult. And I loved every bit of him, but he was a turkey sometimes. Grandkids came along, and this federal agent, you're never an ex-Marine, but retired Marine, became a big teddy bear. They are a restorer of life, aren't they? They take someone who's lived their life, and I hope to experience this someday. They take someone who's lived their life, and it's a glory to the children's children, because you look and you find this person, they've lived their life and they've accomplished all these things, and then God reminds them how precious life really is, and He starts it all over again, doesn't He? Starts it all over again. So Proverbs 17 verse 6, Children's children are the crown of old men. Grandchildren are a wonderful thing. Now, remembrance. While we cannot always know how dedicated a grandmother Naomi was, but I feel pretty safe in saying that she felt so blessed by what Ruth and Boaz had done and Obed coming along, that if there was ever a time that Obed needed something, she was going to be there for him. Can't you just tell that from the text? I may be reading into it too much, but I see a grandmother who's going to do whatever it takes to be the right kind of grandmother. I can't imagine that with Obed needing something that Ruth and Boaz didn't have time for, couldn't provide, that Naomi wouldn't be there to do it. Naomi would want to be the kind of grandmother to Obed that Obed would remember her long after her death. Remembrance is so important. In 2 Samuel chapter 18, you find Absalom being without a child. He erects a pillar, and he called it by his own name because he had no son to keep his name in remembrance. Solomon in Lamentations 3 and verse 20 wrote that he had kept his sins in remembrance to be humble. Christ, when He instituted the Lord's Supper, He said, "Do this in remembrance of me," and the sacrifice that He'd made. The only way to make memories is to make memories. My grandmother, Roberta Setzer, I loved her coffee. I'd go visit her and stay with her, and she lived out in the country, and she'd let me take a BB gun, and Papa would send me out, and he'd call me the Great White Hunter, and I'd go out and I'd shoot birds and squirrels and everything I could. Didn't have a BB gun powerful enough, I think, to kill anything. But her coffee, I always drank coffee at Grandmother's house. Caffeinated coffee. And lots of sugar and lots of cream. Memories are so very important, aren't they? What about memories of the church? I want to encourage you to be grandparents where when you've gone on, because that's what happens, that's the process, that your grandkids remember how important church was to you. That some of their fondest memories involve church activities with grandmother or granddaddy. That when they think about how important life is or what was important to grandmother or granddaddy, church was the most important thing. Remembrance. And then be that rock. How tough do you think Naomi was? All the things she'd gone through, all the suffering she'd been involved with and had to endure. How tough do you think Naomi would have been? She was probably that unmoving rock, unmovable rock in Obed's life. When Obed grew and he had questions about death and his first love, moving, travel, or other things, Naomi could open up her book of experiences and give him such knowledge. Being that foundation, I want to be that paternal, and Amanda wants to be that paternal or that maternal foundation that is in the life of our children and our children's children. Titus 2:2-5 says, that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, in charity, in patience. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Grandparents have an awesome responsibility to teaching and guiding their children and grandchildren. Sometimes grandparents need to come to their children's rescue and help them. A young girl was examining her grandmother's wedding ring, and she said, "Wow, that's heavy and awkward. Rings that were made 50 years ago, they probably weren't very comfortable, I guess." Well, grandmother said, "That's true. But in my day, they were made to last a lifetime." Of those reported to the court systems, I haven't looked at it recently, but every time I've looked, it's always been in the 50 percentile range of marriages that end in divorce. It's almost to the point when children at times can't go to their parents for marital advice. How many, you think about all the divorces and difficulties in marriage, and the children that have grown up and now they're in their 20s and they're 25 and they're thinking about getting married, and they look back at their parents and their parents have been divorced. Some of them are having to look back at that generation before, aren't they? So how do I do that? How do I stay married for 50, 60, 70 years? If you're a parent, I hope you want to be a grandparent like that. If you're a grandparent, I hope you're the type of grandparent they can come to you for advice. They need you. We need that advice of marriages that last and families that stay together. Willie Mays began his Major League Baseball career with only one hit in his first 26 at-bats. Though he went on to hit 660 home runs and steal more than 300 bases, his debut was so unimpressive it seemed like it would only last a few weeks. The turning point for Mays, he said, occurred when his manager, Leo, found him crying in the dugout after yet another miserable performance at the plate. The manager put his arm around him and said, "What's the matter, son?" May said, "I can't hit up here. I belong in the minor leagues." His manager said, he said this to Willie Mays, "As long as I'm manager of the Giants, you'll be my center fielder." Grandparents need to encourage their grandchildren that there's always going to be somebody there that loves them and always there to encourage them and always telling them they can do it. That rock that never moves. We need more grandparents to step up, put their arms around their children and their grandchildren and tell them you can do it. You can remain faithful to the church. You can remain in a committed marriage for 60 years. You can do those things. It's possible. And they need to be reminded of the fact that it can be done. Now finally, redemption. How many parents play a pivotal role upon someone obeying the gospel? Without Naomi, Ruth might not have reached Boaz. Without his seed line through whom Christ came to us, came to this earth. You find that, God works. He's going to have His plan work out providentially however He needs to. But without Naomi, Ruth may not have been part of that. She may not have been part of the seed line of Christ. If Naomi had insisted on Ruth staying behind and had traveled back home alone, there would have been no kinsman redeemer. Naomi admitted that she was beyond marrying age and bearing children. And because Naomi allowed Ruth to follow her along, Ruth was able to meet Boaz, and Ruth was able to bear a child to Boaz. And Naomi then was made a grandma. And later David was born of the same seed line, and redemption came through him. Mark chapter 1 and Luke chapter 2. Too many parents are making mistakes and allowing their children to study on their own, attend on their own, decide about God on their own. We need more grandparents. And I commend all those grandparents who do. We need grandparents who lead that family as an example, as a rock, because they've been restored, because they have remembered. They have memories of how important church is. And they understand how important redemption is. We need grandparents to show us how important redemption is. How important it is to be a part of the Lord's body, added to the Lord's church by His blood, by His sacrifice, and then living faithfully. That example for time on, from this time on, always being the child of God that they should be. It's kind of funny to think about a grandparent. Grandparents are usually older. Nobody kind of tells them what to do normally except the doctor. And then you find that as they live their lives, they are yet children to God. And they bend their will to His. What a great example. This November I'm very thankful for grandparents. And I'm very thankful for every experience they've ever taught me and every principle that I've ever gotten from them. Be a good grandparent. First of all, be a good Christian. If you have a need this morning, let me encourage you. If you've never obeyed the gospel, won't you do so? If you already have and you're suffering, you need our help and our encouragement, let us do that for you. If you have a need, please come as we stand and as we sing.